รายการต่อไปนี้เป็นรายการทั่วไปสามารถรับชมได้ทุกวัย
สวัสดีค่ะมองเรามองโลกวันนี้เราจะพูดคุยกับคุณเนล เมอรีโนเป็นผู้หญิงเป็นชาวอเมริกันแล้วก็เป็นคนที่ทำงานด้านผู้หญิงมาโดยตลอดนะคะโดยจะเป็นคนคิดแคมเปญและโครงการที่น่าสนใจได้รับการตอบรับที่ดีที่สหรัฐอเมริกาค่ะยกตัวอย่างเช่นแคมเปญ Take Our Daughters to Work Day หรือวันพาลูกสาวและเด็กผู้หญิงไปในที่ทำงานทั้งนี้ก็เพื่อเป็นการให้เด็กผู้หญิงนั้นได้เห็นอาชีพที่หลากหลายเปิดโลกทัศน์แล้วก็สร้างแรงบันดาลใจให้กับพวกเธออีกหนึ่งโครงการนะคะที่น่าสนใจก็คือ Count Me In ซึ่งเป็นโครงการปล่อยกู้ขนาดเล็กให้กับผู้ประกอบการหญิงค่ะที่สำคัญเลยก็คือว่าจะมีการให้คำปรึกษานักธุรกิจหญิงเหล่านี้ด้วยนะคะพยายามที่จะช่วยดันยอดขายค่ะให้แตะ$1 ล้านสหรัฐให้ได้ในโลกทุกวันนี้ที่เปิดกว้างมากยิ่งขึ้นผู้หญิงยังต้องเจอข้อจำกัดอะไรบ้างและสำหรับผู้หญิงที่ต้องการจะทำธุรกิจเป็นของตัวเองทุกคนก็ต้องเริ่มจากเล็กๆก่อนนะคะจะต้องเจอกับอุปสรรคอะไรบ้างเราไปฟังคำแนะนำดีๆจากคุณเนล เมอรีโนกันค่ะเนล เมอรีโนเป็นลูกสาวของโจเซฟ เมอรีโนอดีตวุฒิสมาชิกรัฐนิวเจอร์ซีย์กับมอลลี่ เมอรีโนเธอเริ่มต้นอาชีพด้วยการเป็นนักเคลื่อนไหวในขบวนการต่อสู้เพื่อผู้ใช้แรงงานโดยเฉพาะแรงงานหญิงหลังจากนั้นเธอก็ทำงานด้านผู้หญิงมาโดยตลอดเมอรีโนได้ก่อตั้งบริษัท Strategy Communication Action หรือ SCA ที่นิวยอร์กซึ่งเป็นบริษัทที่เชี่ยวชาญด้านการคิดการรณรงค์ให้ความรู้และสร้างแรงบันดาลใจให้กับผู้คนการรณรงค์ที่เด่นๆและประสบความสำเร็จได้แก่ Take Our Daughters to Work Day โครงการพาลูกสาวไปทำงานด้วยเพื่อเปิดโลกให้เด็กๆและโครงการ Count Me In ที่ช่วยส่งเสริมผู้ประกอบการหญิงในการทำธุรกิจในชีวิตส่วนตัวเมอรีโนแต่งงานกับแกรี่ คองเกอร์และมีลูกด้วยกัน2 คน
Now you've been working with women's issues your whole life. What sparked it?
Well, one thing, I am a woman. I came up at the sort of real height of the women's movement in the United States when Gloria Steinem, Bella Abzug, there was a real Betty Friedan. They were all very alive for me and very much working in the public eye. And it just made so much sense to me. My father was in politics. I watched him helping women run for office because I went and did the public things with my father. And it was pretty clear to me that that was something that women could do. And so that was sort of the direction that I went in, was finding ways for women to do whatever it is they wanted to do, because I'm all for women staying home if they want to. But if you don't want to or you can't afford it, how can you be in a position to do the best for your family and for yourself?
The challenges back then
Yes.
compared to now, 2015, are the challenges more or less still the same or have there been improvements?
I believe there have been many improvements. There are more women in the workforce everywhere that I know of. I think there are a few places probably that haven't changed much, but I don't know of a place where it hasn't changed some. But I think there have been great progress in Thailand in terms of the number of women who work, the number of women who sit on corporate boards. I think we are behind in the U.S. on, say, corporate boards, and I think there's a real need. If you think about it, if half the population is female and are then therefore half of the customers for every kind of company, why wouldn't you want us on your boards and in your leadership and all of those things? And I think that has happened in some places. It needs to continue to improve.
เนล เมอรีโนเป็นผู้ริเริ่มโครงการรณรงค์ที่ชื่อว่า Take Our Daughters to Work Day ซึ่งเกิดขึ้นในปี 1992 โดยเป็นวันที่ให้เด็กผู้หญิงได้ไปดูการทำงานจริงๆของผู้ใหญ่ในอาชีพต่างๆเพื่อเปิดโลกและสร้างแรงบันดาลใจให้เด็กผู้หญิงได้เห็นความสำคัญของการมีความสามารถมากกว่าแค่เรื่องของรูปร่างหน้าตาได้เรียนรู้ตัวเองและมองไปในอนาคตว่าโตขึ้นอยากเป็นอะไร รวมถึงให้เห็นว่าการเป็นผู้หญิงไม่ได้เป็นข้อจำกัดในการทำอาชีพที่อยากจะทำต่อมาในปี 1993 Take Our Daughters to Work Day กลายเป็นมูลนิธิที่ดำเนินโครงการทั้งในอเมริกาและในต่างประเทศและในปี 2003 โครงการได้เปิดโอกาสให้เด็กผู้ชายด้วยและกลายเป็นมูลนิธิ Take Our Daughters and Sons to Work Day โครงการนี้ประสบความสำเร็จมากขึ้นเรื่อยๆแม้แต่ทำเนียบขาวก็จะเปิดให้เด็กๆได้เข้ามาพูดคุยกับสตรีหมายเลขหนึ่งอย่างเช่นมิเชลโอบามาในทุกๆปี
For all the years, you have been campaigning, a lot of campaigns, and one very interesting one is the Take Our Daughters to Work Day.
Yes.
That was back in 1992.
Yes.
How did you come up with that idea?
I came up with it actually at my father's retirement dinner because I was listening to all the people talk, and I recognized all of them from my childhood and young adulthood, and I realized sitting there that how important I had the privilege to know these people. And I thought, what would happen if girls, all girls, knew who their parents worked with? And what would that tell them about their parents beyond what children understand about their parents at home? You know, because what you understand at home, in a lot of cases still, is that mom's doing a lot of the work at home and dad's relaxing. I thought girls particularly needed to see what their mothers and fathers do outside of the house to start to make choices about the kind of lives they wanted to lead.
And how did that impact young girls?
It made girls feel important, and not important because they're beautiful or cute. It made them feel important because of what they think. And that was my goal, was to get them to think beyond their beauty or their, you know, their cuteness and think about what role do they want to play in the workforce? How do they want to use their mind? Because there's so much emphasis, you know, between, if the age group is between 9 and 14, you start to get very aware of, you know, makeup and hairdos and all that stuff, all of which is good. But there's more to us than makeup and hairdos. And I think the sooner girls realize that that isn't all we are, and that if you don't look like the standard beauty, that's okay, because, you know, there are other ways for you to express yourself and all those kinds of things. So it was really to tell them and to help them appreciate how important and valuable they are to society in general, and that they get to decide what they do, that it's, you know, it's not something that's going to be handed to them, that they can make decisions and make decisions about school and all the things they need to do to become what they want to be.
But this campaign expanded to include boys as well, right? In the end.
It did, yes. It was never meant to be against boys or men. I mean, that has never been my thing. I mean, I have a wonderful husband. I have brothers. I like men. I do. But I am very pro-woman. I think that's the difference. I am very pro-girl and pro-woman, and think that we need as much promotion as possible for us to get all the confidence we have to get going, to do the things we want to do. Mm-hmm. So the boy thing was, I think, fueled by, in some cases, parents who didn't have girls, but also by people who started to think it was unfair, which really drove me crazy, because, you know, women still make less than men in the US, you know, for most jobs. So it still isn't fair. The things that really matter in terms of fairness haven't changed enough. Women still don't make $1 for $1 like men do. We still make 70 cents, 75 cents for the dollar.
Today,
that has not changed. Even though we have legislation, we have all kinds of things. It's also indicative of how long change takes, because the legislation was, 20 years ago, and still most places don't pay women equally. But so I would say it was about thinking that somehow boys were getting, left out of something, and in fact for 8 hours they were getting left out of something. And is that a tragedy? I don't think so, but a lot of people did. And what I argued is that the girls should have their day and the boys should have a day of their own, that it shouldn't be them put together, because I think the lives of girls and boys are different. And we should focus on them a little differently, because the companies that took boys and girls to work, particularly in the age group, the boys were a lot harder to handle, because at that age the boys want to run around and whereas the girls were happy to sit and listen and whatever. So it's challenging. It's not the same. It's not the same.
ในปี 1999 เนล เมอรีโนได้ก่อตั้งและเป็นประธานของ Count Me In for Women's Economic Independence ซึ่งเป็นผู้ให้กู้ยืมเงินขนาดเล็กพร้อมให้คำปรึกษาและช่วยเหลือผู้ประกอบการหญิงที่เริ่มต้นสร้างธุรกิจขนาดเล็กให้ก้าวไปสู่ธุรกิจขนาด$1 ล้าน Count Me In ได้สร้างแรงบันดาลใจให้กับผู้หญิงมาแล้วหลายหมื่นคน
Another very, very interesting project of yours is Count Me In.
Yes.
So that is micro-lending
Yes.
to women entrepreneurs. What big problem do you want to solve by setting this project up?
I want to solve the same problem. It's let's get money into the hands of women because women do good things with their money. They take care of their families. They put money into the education of their children. I'm not saying men don't do that, but they don't do it as often as women do. It changes the balance of things. So my interest in that is making sure that women have the economic wherewithal to grow a business in a way that often they don't have the opportunity to.
But why do you focus on women? Because when you talk about business, business is business. I mean, business people, men or women, they would face more or less the same obstacles, same challenges in running a business.
In some cases, that's absolutely true. That is absolutely true. I think in getting it started, in having the confidence in yourself to do some of those things, women need more of a push, more help. I find that what I've done for many years is really give permission to women to be themselves, to really be themselves. I think there are all kinds of cultural things that are passed on from our mothers and grandmothers about how we're supposed to behave and what we're supposed to do, and that voice is running in your head. You know, or should I do this? Should I be this assertive? Should I be this ambitious? And somebody has to be the other voice until the woman gets that voice in her head. And I am often that voice that says, go ahead. I talk to women all the time who didn't think they could do something. And I told them, this is a really good idea. You should do this. And that's all they needed to hear.
You try very hard to encourage business women, I mean entrepreneurs, business owners, to actually grow the business to reach the $1 million mark.
Yes.
Why is this mark so crucial?
What was interesting is we did some research, and I was very surprised to find out that this was in 2005, that out of the 10.5 million women who were in business in the United States at that time, only 250,000 had hit $1 million. And you looked at the similar number, there were about 11.5 million men in business. So it's not a huge difference between men and women in terms of who has a business, but there were 1 million men at 1 million. So I looked at that and I said, we gotta equalize that.
But why is it that way to start with?
Why is it that way to start with? Because I think women hadn't really thought big enough. And I do think a lot of women go into business because they can't deal with the hours at a more traditional workplace. And so their first inclination is to keep the business small because then they can take care of the kids and do all
more
the
flexible.
Yes, it's more flexible. But what we taught them is that you can have greater flexibility if you hire more people, as opposed to thinking, I got to keep it really small and make it all me, 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 because you can't do that much in a day. So it was kind of counterintuitive. The intuitive thing for some people is to say, I'll keep this small. So, you know, I don't take on big overhead, which is a smart thing as a business owner to begin with. But it can't be how you see it far into the future. You have to be thinking about, how am I going to grow this? How am I going to have more people to expand your capacity to make more money and grow an organization? You have to have other people.
But having more people would mean having more responsibilities as well.
Absolutely.
And my flexibility in life, you know, I would have to negotiate with that. I would have less.
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. If one of your highest values is to make sure you take your children to school and pick them up, let's say. Now, some person could design a business, but that's only open from like 9 to 3 to do that. Or you can have some employees that when you go to deal with the kids, you got somebody doing stuff so that you can decide as the owner that you don't work past 3 o'clock and that somebody else does 3 to 6 or 3 to 5. I mean, there's so many ways. Small isn't necessarily the thing that's going to work for them. It was initially what we thought. And I don't think everybody wants a big business. I don't think any woman who has a small business should think that they're doing anything wrong. It is a question of if you have that ambition and are thinking about, or you've done it for 5 years and you're kind of frustrated because you're working harder than you've ever worked. You know, because if you're getting more clients and it's still you are working all the time and taking care of a family. So it's at what point do you decide, I'd like to make more money here, or I'd like to, you know, expand and be in, you know, two locations or something like that. You have to find more people.
So how do you grow a business into a $1 million business?
The most important thing is to write $1 million or $1 billion baht on a piece of paper if you already have a business, and figure out how much stuff do you have to sell, how many clients do you need to hit that number. Most people don't think about it that way. Just
Set the goal first.
Set the goal and then work backwards. Work backwards. How many products do you have to sell? How many units of service do you have to sell to do that? And can you do all the selling yourself, or do you need someone to help you sell? But what I found most liberating for so many women was when they did that. It was like, oh, that's what I have to do. And it's really quite startling when you do it, because you can also see that you're not in a business that's going to easily do that. You know, that just the units of sales and all those kind of things, you got to sell too many, or you got to take on too much inventory to do it, or whatever it is. But there are a lot of things that you see, you go, wow.
ในปี 2005 Count Me In ได้เปิดโครงการที่ชื่อว่า Make Mine a $1 Million Business ซึ่งเป็นการแข่งขันการทำธุรกิจของผู้ประกอบการหญิงโดยตั้งเป้ารายได้ไว้ที่$1 ล้านต่อปีหรือมากกว่านั้นทาง Count Me In จะให้คำปรึกษาเพื่อพัฒนาธุรกิจให้ไปสู่เป้าหมายผลงานที่ผ่านมา 28% ของธุรกิจที่เข้าร่วมแข่งขันสามารถทำยอดขายได้ถึง$1 ล้านต่อปี
You also hold contests, Make Mine a $1 million business
yes.
contest.
Yes.
And so many inspiring stories or business successes come out of it. What are some of the stories that you have met through this contest that you never thought possible before?
There's a woman, I immediately thought of you, she said it. She was a pilot in the Air Force. And she got up on the stage and she described a business that was so unique. She loves her dog, and after she got out of the service, she likes to go camping. And she and her husband went camping one day, and they forgot to bring the bag of dog food. And they gave the dog, they had energy bars with them, and so they fed the dog the energy bars. And while she was doing it, she started to think about, why couldn't we make a meal replacement bar for dogs? So she went home, she and her husband, and started cooking up stuff, trying to figure out like what the dog would like, what had enough nutrition in it. So she made a product called Turbo Pups. And she's done really well. She's gone from nothing to, you know, she's getting close to $1 million.
Wow.
And she came up, she made a product that's new, better, and different, because there was nothing like it on the market. There was no meal replacement. There were snacks, there were treats, but there wasn't something that was nutritious, because these bars, there are 800 calories in those bars. And they've also, that was for, they had a big dog, so they made one, and then they realized that they needed to make smaller ones for people who have small dogs, because that's too much. And it's always a combination. The ones that do well, they love something or are passionate about something, and they're also trying to solve a problem. And she did both beautifully.
Have you come across business women who already have a business but couldn't grow it to $1 million mark?
Yes.
And then through this contest, they have become so big right now.
Oh, there's so many of them. There's a woman who I met who was a very successful business consultant. You know, went in and helped people, you know, figure out new strategies for their business. But it was very clear, and she was close to $1 million then, and she just didn't like it very much. It didn't really. And she ended up getting an opportunity to, what she wanted to do was design products that would help stop violence. And she has created a pin that you wear. It's called Tiger Eye Security, and when your heart rate starts to go up, the pin is activated, has a camera in it, it records what's going on, and when you say things like no, stop, don't, it activates itself and notifies the police. And it's a little pin.
Wow.
But I see, there's another woman, I'll tell you one more story. She had an uncle who died of AIDS. And she was very concerned. It was before there was really a lot of medication available. And she didn't understand why he couldn't have been in more of the drug trials, more of the testing. And she created a whole company to advise and help pharmaceutical companies expand the groups of people that they use for testing. And she went from 100,000 to like, I think 40 million, and has clients. All the pharmaceutical companies are now her client.
ในปี 2009 Nell Merlino ได้ออกหนังสือชื่อ Stepping Out of Line Lessons for Women Who Want It Their Way in Life, in Love and at Work หนังสือเล่มนี้ส่งเสริมให้ผู้หญิงกล้าที่จะทำเพื่อสิ่งที่ตัวเองมุ่งหวังทั้งด้านการงานและความรัก
You wrote a book, Stepping Out of Line.
Yes.
So how do we step out of line to achieve what we want, especially the first step? I think the first step of stepping out from our comfort zone, actually women or men, same, it's the most difficult. How do we do that?
I think you have to go inside. You have to go inside and decide and know what you're best at and what makes you alive. What makes you feel really good and satisfied. I think we all have something in us that we want to do, and we need to just find it, you know. And it can be anything that brings us both some level of satisfaction and a real sense that we are making a contribution. Because what's important to us as humans is that we engage with each other and help each other. I mean, in its most basic sense. And what is that for you? And you may have to step out of line to be able to do that.
Some people say women don't think big enough.
That is true.
But at the same time, we now see a lot of female CEOs sitting
Absolutely.
at the top of companies.
Yes, yes. And I think we are seeing these changes in stages. You know, you see, Marissa Mayer at Yahoo and, all the things, Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook and all those companies. And I've met some extraordinary women CEOs here.
So women can think big.
Oh, yes, they can. Yes, they can. Absolutely. I think it's not a question of us not being capable. I think it is a question of giving ourselves permission to play at that level. It's giving ourselves permission and developing a network of people that are going to support you in doing that. Because I think one of the mistakes that women make is to do a really good job and keep their head down and hope somebody will recognize it, as opposed to putting their head up and saying, I did that. And I think there is a real art for women to learn how to take credit and be ambitious and make men feel comfortable with that, or make other women feel comfortable as well, where you're not looked at as, sort of some conceited, bragger, who's just always talking about themselves.
Hillary Clinton is running for president.
Yes, she is.
Now she's trying to smash, more or less, the highest glass ceiling in the USA.
Yes.
Is that the best motivation for women everywhere today?
It inspires me, and I think it inspires a lot of women. I think what she's really done, though, I know she talks about cracking the glass ceiling. I think what she's done and what I think women need to do is raise the roof, make room for more people.
Some men say there are too many talks about women's issues and women's rights, women's this and that. What about men? Should we focus on them as well?
I think there are a lot of men who have benefited from the introduction of women into positions of power because we have different values. I.e., I think there are a lot of men. I watch my brothers now taking care of their children. My father didn't do that. It wasn't expected of him. He didn't have the time to do it. He didn't structure his life. And I know my brothers have a different relationship with their children than my father did. I can't imagine there are men that would want to go back to the old way where they don't spend time with their kids, and it's the most precious thing in life. So I think a lot of this is good for everybody. I think if women do well, men are going to do just fine.
What would be your advice for women to be successful?
Know what they're best at and really appreciate their value, and be confident that they can solve any problem they have.
ำแนะนำของคุณเนลเมอรีโนจริงๆแล้วไม่ใช่เฉพาะผู้หญิงเท่านั้นนะคะที่ใช้ได้ไม่ว่าจะเป็นผู้ชายหรือว่าเพศอะไรก็ตามก็สามารถนำไปปรับใช้ได้เช่นเดียวกันเพราะว่าสิ่งที่เธอต้องการจะเน้นก็คือว่าให้เราทุกคนนั้นเชื่อมั่นในความสามารถของตัวเองกล้าที่จะวางเป้าหมายใหญ่ๆเอาไว้แล้วก็ลองนะคะทำเต็มที่เพื่อทำให้ฝันของเรานั้นเป็นจริงให้ได้ค่ะพบกันใหม่สัปดาห์หน้าวันนี้สวัสดีค่ะ